Chapter 1. Yara, Mom's been diagnosed with stomach cancer. I know it's hard to accept, but the elderly don't always understand, and we have to stay strong. As soon as I opened my eyes, I heard my husband Nathaniel's voice. The diagnosis was laid out on the table, the word stomach cancer standing out in stark black and white. We'll borrow the money together. Even if I have to kneel and beg, it's a small price to pay. We have to get through this, no matter what. His voice was urgent, and from every angle, he looked like the perfect husband, someone willing to sacrifice everything for his family. If I hadn't died once before, I would have been deeply moved. The cause of my death in my previous life was this very diagnosis, or more accurately, it was Nathaniel. A week ago, Nathaniel's private hospital organized a welfare checkup, and he immediately set aside 2 spots for my parents. He even said to me, "Since we're married, your parents are my parents too. Taking care of them is my responsibility as well." As a result, my mom was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and it was already at an advanced stage. In general, if the family of a cancer patient can afford the treatment, there is hope for recovery. In my previous life, we did indeed sell everything we had, begged for money from anyone we could, and Nathaniel, true to his word, knelt and begged both relatives and friends for help to pay for my mom's treatment. My parents were thankful, thinking I had married the right man. But not long after, Nathaniel suddenly told me that the hospital was holding elections for team leaders, and that borrowing money had left a bad impression with the higher-ups. He said, "The salary doesn't matter, but if I become the team leader, my mom's treatment will be more secure." So, we pretended to divorce, and in name, I became the one to carry the debt alone. Who could have predicted that the day after we paid for the surgery, Nathaniel would disappear, taking my mom's life-saving money with him? I went to the police, but since we were technically divorced, they couldn't help. Left with an enormous medical debt, I couldn't save my mom. She passed away in despair, unable to wait for the money that could have saved her. My dad, overwhelmed by the pressure, jumped to his death. The medical debt now fell squarely on my shoulders, and I worked relentlessly, day and night, to repay it. But until the day I died, I never got back the money Nathaniel had stolen. I never imagined I would be given a second chance at life. But now that fate has given me this opportunity, I won't waste it. Nathaniel will pay for his blood debt. Chapter 2. I took the diagnosis paper and read it over carefully. Nathaniel's face was tense, unnatural. "Yara, you have to accept the reality. You know, no matter how many times you look at it, the result won't change. We can't waste any time, you need to withdraw all the money you can." I smiled faintly, my tone calm as I replied, "You're right, Mom's illness can't wait. But don't you think we should go to a top-tier hospital for a second opinion? Just to be sure? After all, private hospitals charge several times more than regular ones for both checks and treatment. What if they prescribe unnecessary medication?" At these words, Nathaniel's gaze shifted, his expression faltering. I saw everything. Of course, he was nervous. Because in my previous life, I only discovered after my mom's death that this unscrupulous private hospital and Nathaniel were in cahoots. My mom wasn't sick at all. The diagnosis paper had been falsified from the very beginning. They concocted this scheme to deceive us and began overprescribing medication that led to her premature death. Taking my parents for that checkup was the first step of their scam. A hospital is a hospital. What difference could there be? Going to a top-tier hospital would waste more time. We can't afford to delay treatment for Mom. Nathaniel suddenly stood up, his face contorting with faint hurt. You think they would overprescribe medication? That's impossible. Our hospital has never done anything like that. Yara, don't you trust me? His emotional appeal, paired with his sincere expression, almost made me want to applaud his acting skills. But unfortunately, if I exposed him now, not only would my parents remain blind to his true nature, but the hospital would likely claim it was a simple misdiagnosis. Nathaniel wouldn't face the consequences he deserved. I never said I didn't trust you. Why are you so upset? It's just that I can't accept Mom's diagnosis yet. Nathaniel immediately replied, Yara, I'm glad you're starting to understand. We can't afford to delay this. Of course, we won't delay. After all, if we delay, how could I ever watch you get what you deserve? Chapter 3. The next morning, I brought Nathaniel to my Uncle Charles's house. As soon as Charles opened the door, Nathaniel's eyes welled up with tears. But just at that moment, I suddenly knelt at the doorstep with a sharp thud. Nathaniel, standing behind me, froze in place, completely stunned. Taking the initiative, I calmly explained my mother's cancer diagnosis, my tone sincere. The neighbors, who had gathered, murmured among themselves, commenting on how dutiful I was. As expected, Charles agreed to lend us the money, just like in my previous life. Nathaniel's face lit up with relief, as if the money was already in his hands. However, as soon as he took the bank card from Charles, I spoke up. Charles, don't worry. Even between brothers, accounts should be kept clear. We'll write an IOU for you. All right, we'll do as Yara says. Charles responded readily. He helped me up and called my aunt to bring a pen and paper. All eyes were on Nathaniel as he awkwardly held the bank card. Yara, this money is for your mom. So what about it? Didn't you say we're one as a couple? We'll pay it back together, in the end, I said, calmly cutting him off. With the neighbors watching, Nathaniel had no room to argue. Reluctantly, he signed the IOU under the scrutiny of a dozen pairs of eyes. Just as he finished signing, Charles suddenly slapped his forehead. Oh, I took the wrong card. That one's empty, there's no money in it. He quickly snatched the empty card from Nathaniel's hand and handed me the real one, the one with the money. Nathaniel shot me a look of pure fury, as if his eyes were shooting daggers, but I pretended not to notice and graciously accepted the card. Charles gave me a knowing wink. This had all been planned the night before over the phone, to make Nathaniel sign the IOU, no less. In my past life, Nathaniel didn't only hurt my family, he caused trouble for my relatives as well. He borrowed money from all of them, and when he learned that Charles had wealth, he went to their house in distress, crying and pleading, putting Charles under immense pressure. Charles agreed to lend him money, but the commotion was so great that the IOU was never written. As a result, when I divorced Nathaniel, the debt fell squarely on my shoulders. This time, I won't let him get away with it. Since he enjoys morally blackmailing others, it's time for him to experience the consequences of being morally blackmailed himself. But even this IOU is just the first step. It's nowhere near enough. Chapter 4. A few days later, I kept acting anxious, and Nathaniel naturally assumed I was just focused on raising money, without suspecting anything. It wasn't until he checked the medical card that he discovered that, despite all the money I'd raised, I hadn't paid a single cent to the unscrupulous hospital. He stormed over to me, furious. Yara, what's going on? Do you want to watch Mom die? Does that make you happy? He was acting as if the patient wasn't my mother, but his own. I said slowly, don't rush. I've been busy raising money and haven't had the time to pay the fees yet. Then give me the money you raised. I'll go pay it. Nathaniel fixed his gaze on me, clearly skeptical of my excuse. I turned away, rubbed my eyes hard until they were red, then turned back to him, looking up at him with a pitiful expression. Honey, I need to discuss something with you. Let's get a divorce. Nathaniel's eyes widened in shock. What? He was probably terrified, thinking his scheme had been exposed. He hadn't gotten a penny yet, and now I was proposing a divorce. Had I discovered something? His face drained of color, and his lips trembled as if he was about to explain himself, but I cut him off. I think my family's situation is really dragging you down. I continued, I heard you're about to compete for the department head position. I'm afraid this will affect your promotion. Why don't we just pretend to divorce, and then you can use the money to treat Mom? I spoke earnestly, even fighting back tears. Do you think I want to leave you? It's all for Mom. Once you're department head, I'll still need you to look after her health. Nathaniel stood there, stunned. In my previous life, he was the one who proposed the divorce, using the same excuse, his career advancement. But back then, most of the money I raised had already been handed over to him, and he had worked with the corrupt hospital to prepare inflated medical bills. The night we finalized our divorce, Nathaniel disappeared with the money. He left, the money vanished, and the hospital tricked me into signing off on the medical bills, which left me with a mountain of debt. At that moment, Nathaniel appeared confused, clearly not expecting me to propose the divorce first. He hesitated before saying, "But if we wait until I'm promoted to pay the fees, Mom's condition might not hold up." I immediately replied, "That's why we need to get divorced now, immediately. The sooner we divorce, the sooner your promotion will be secured." Nathaniel's eyes shifted, and after a brief moment, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right. But the surgery can wait, but the medication can't. Mom's condition can't be delayed. Give me $10,000 first." Chapter 5. $10,000 for medication. Nathaniel really dared to ask for that. If he got the money, there was no way he would give a single cent to that unscrupulous hospital. In my previous life, he had used the same excuse to deceive me. He would issue ridiculously inflated medical bills, while only giving my mother basic vitamins. Later, the hospital sued me for the bills Nathaniel had orchestrated, demanding repayment. At that time, Nathaniel, who had been missing, reappeared in court. He smugly declared that we were no longer married and testified on behalf of the hospital, shifting all the debt onto me. "I understand, I'll give you the money in a few days," I said. Nathaniel, clearly eager for more, asked, "When exactly?" I smiled. "After the divorce is finalized." Of course, this way, he wouldn't be able to access any of our marital assets. After the divorce, I transferred the money to Nathaniel, who was overjoyed, thinking I was just an easy target, a gullible fool with plenty of money. A week later, he announced his promotion and asked for another $20,000 for surgery fees. This time, I handed him an empty bank card. I knew he was cautious. He wouldn't touch the card until everything was truly settled. In my previous life, he only dared to spend the money after my death, so I wasn't worried that he would catch on this time. That night, just like before, Nathaniel disappeared without a trace. I first told my parents about Nathaniel's disappearance, to reassure them. Then, I began privately contacting his former patients. This scoundrel was certainly no stranger to this kind of scheme. Chapter 6. Half a year later. Because I hadn't settled the medication fees Nathaniel had charged, Ryan Hospital had eventually sued me for overdue medical bills. Just like in my previous life, my missing ex-husband appeared in court, sitting smugly as the plaintiff, eager to watch me fail. When I first saw him, I pretended to be shocked. "Nathaniel? What are you doing here? 6 months ago, you scammed me and divorced me, and now you dare to show your face," he sneered, his true nature showing through. Then he slowly added, "This is a court, Yara. Be careful what you say. You voluntarily divorced me, and now you're accusing me of scamming you? Do you have any evidence? But I'd like to ask you, how do you plan to repay the $50,000 in medical bills you owe our hospital?" I yawned. "What medical bills? I don't know what you're talking about." "Humph, playing dumb, just as I thought." Nathaniel scoffed and slammed a stack of medical bills onto the table. I glanced through them carefully. From my mother's cancer diagnosis to the present, it seemed like a daily tally of medications, the very same evidence he had used against me in my previous life. "Your mother was diagnosed with cancer, and you were broke," he accused. "Out of our past relationship, I helped you apply for extensions on the payments. I never expected you would just skip out on paying. Now, not only are you unrepentant, but you're also trying to frame me. Do you really think you can escape the law?" If it weren't for the distance between us, I was sure his spit would have hit my face. If he succeeded in this case, I would be left with nothing, while Nathaniel would take my money and go on to live a carefree life. What a perfect plan. "Oh?" I calmly pulled another document from my bag. "Then explain this to me, why would I go to your hospital for medication?" My mother's checkup results all show she's perfectly healthy. Chapter 7. Nathaniel, not thinking it through, shot back. Nathaniel, what kind of dream are you having? I personally did your mother's checkups. I know exactly what those results say. Stop pretending you don't know. You just don't want to pay and want to get the medication for free. How shameless. I smiled and tossed the checkup report toward him. Take a look at this report, what's wrong with it? Nathaniel sneered, certain I was just bluffing. But as he skimmed through it, his face grew darker with every line. Impossible. This report must be fake. It can't be your mother's. Yara, you must have used your own checkup results. Your Honor, I accuse her of perjury, he shouted. I couldn't help but laugh. His audacity was something else. Nathaniel, after disappearing for half a year, you don't even recognize my mother's name? I taunted. Ryan Hospital quickly realized something was off and snatched the report from Nathaniel's hands. They scrutinized it carefully, and the date on the report was the day after Nathaniel had disappeared. Clearly, he had no involvement in the checkup. The judge, having reviewed the evidence, turned to Nathaniel and asked, Plaintiff, you claim the defendant owes medical bills, yet her mother is not even sick. Why would she need medication? Nathaniel continued muttering impossible over and over, sweat trickling down his forehead. In a last-ditch attempt to regain control, he slammed his fist on the table. That doesn't prove she didn't receive medication. Your Honor, look, her signature is on the medical bills, he insisted. Since I had given him the surgery fee earlier, he thought I was just naive enough to have forged the bills. He figured today would be just another chance to extort money from me. What he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this moment. Ridiculous. I retorted. A signature requires the person to be present. My mother isn't even sick. I haven't been to Ryan Hospital once in the last 6 months. So where did these signatures come from? Should we do a handwriting analysis? At that moment, Ryan Hospital's legal team, sensing trouble, intervened quickly. Your Honor, Nathaniel is the doctor responsible for prescribing medication. It's clear that he must have forged these medical bills. We were completely unaware of any fraud. Nathaniel, you're fired. And you're being sued for damaging our hospital's reputation. We are also willing to refund all of Miss White's expenses and compensate her for mental distress. Miss White, we sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding, they said. Chapter 8. At that moment, Ryan Hospital was eager to place all the blame squarely on Nathaniel's shoulders. After all, forging medical bills was a serious crime. Rather than face the consequences themselves, they were willing to let him shoulder the full responsibility. Nathaniel sat there, numb, struggling to comprehend what had just transpired. I seized the opportunity and began to explain the truth to the judge. 6 months ago, Nathaniel altered my mother's medical report, falsely claiming she had mid-stage stomach cancer. After our divorce, he tricked me into handing over $10,000 for medications. When he disappeared with the money, I realized something was wrong. I took my mother to a reputable hospital for a second opinion, only to discover that the medication he had prescribed her was nothing but vitamins. Now, he's forged medical bills to frame me. His actions, fraud included, could result in over 10 years in prison, possibly even life, and substantial fines. Nathaniel's face turned ashen as the realization began to settle in. He must have been desperately trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. Gradually, his expression shifted from confusion and anger to understanding, and finally, he gritted his teeth and spat, Yara, you really are good at pretending. I thought it was strange how easily you agreed to the divorce. Turns out, you planned all of this from the beginning. I responded calmly, with a slow smile, Mr. Nathaniel, don't speak so recklessly. Do you have any proof to back up your accusations? You, he stammered, turning to the judge in a last-ditch effort. Just wait. He then tried his final play. Your Honor, I'll repay the money. I have the money. I thought my mom had cancer, so I didn't think it was fraud," he added desperately, almost pleading. "I didn't know the medical bills were forged. It must have been a system error." If he played the remorseful defendant and promised to repay the money, he might get a lighter sentence, perhaps a few years of labor reform, after which he could be free. Ridiculous. I wasn't about to let him off that easily. In my previous life, after my parents died tragically, I had to work tirelessly to pay off debts. By the time I was 25, my body felt like it belonged to a 52-year-old. When I was brought to court, I had tearfully asked Nathaniel why he had done this to me. His response had been nothing but cruel laughter. He had pointed at me and spat, "Yara, I'm honestly sick of you. You're ugly and boring. The only value you had was leaving me money. Go join your useless mother and worthless father, idiot." In the end, I died in a car accident, emotionally broken and exhausted. He had used my love for my family to manipulate me, knowing I would never abandon my mother. He had swindled me, my relatives, and my mother, giving her fake medication, forging bills, and suing me to drain every last cent from me. I smiled as I placed another stack of documents in front of him. "You didn't do this on purpose? Then tell me, do you recognize these people?" Chapter 9. Nathaniel collapsed to the ground in fear. The documents I presented were the files of his former patients. I had spent half a year painstakingly tracking down these 7 individuals. They were all diagnosed with cancer by Nathaniel. But the medication he prescribed was merely fake packaging, replaced with other drugs. Moreover, their medical bills contained numerous inflated charges. "These people are all honest, uneducated farmers," I explained. Nathaniel exploited their trust, ruining one family after another. As soon as I finished speaking, cries and shouts erupted in the hearing. "It's him. He treated my mother, and he killed her. Heartless doctor, if not for Miss Yara, we'd still be in the dark. I want to sue him too. He gave my father the wrong medication, and our medical bills don't add up. And then there was the matter of the money he owed. Didn't he use his ignorance as an excuse for the $10,000? No problem, I had Charles's IOU. Didn't he claim a system error? No problem, patient testimonies and medical records were plentiful." Nathaniel had no chance to argue. As he was taken away, his eyes looked like he wanted to devour me alive. We all knew he faced at least 10 years in prison. As I left the court, the sun was shining. I basked in the warm sunlight, feeling reborn once more. As I took a deep breath, Ryan Hospital's legal representative approached me, staring intently. Then, with a polite demeanor, he said, "Miss Yara, you have quite the skill. But this isn't over yet. Let's see who has the last laugh." Chapter 10. Even before the trial, I knew this counterattack would thoroughly offend Ryan Hospital. I had spent half a year investigating, gathering enough evidence to convict Nathaniel, but it was far from enough to bring down Ryan Hospital. Ryan Hospital would undoubtedly try to distance themselves from him. But I wouldn't let it go. My grudge wasn't just against Nathaniel. His imprisonment was merely an appetizer. Bringing the true culprits behind Ryan Hospital to justice was the only way to truly end my past life's pain. Moreover, if I didn't do this, countless others would be deceived, losing their loved ones and their homes. After returning home, I immediately organized all the evidence and, with my ID in hand, posted everything online. This included evidence of Nathaniel's falsified medical reports, the exorbitant medical fees charged by the hospital, and my suspicions about Ryan Hospital. I knew that public opinion was my best weapon. The voice of the people was my strength. As long as I posted it, someone would notice Ryan Hospital. Finding enough evidence to bring them down was only a matter of time. But the next day, I found chicken blood splattered at my doorstep. The word "die" was painted in large letters with oil. When I went online, I saw that my video from the previous day had been restricted. I didn't give up. After cleaning up the mess at home, I reposted the evidence online. But things took a turn for the worse. When my father came home that evening, he had bruises on his face. My parents usually ran a small street stall, and I noticed they hadn't brought their cart back. I quickly asked what had happened. My mother asked, "Yara, do we really have to get involved with Ryan Hospital?" I was stunned. Of course, they almost destroyed our family. My mother hugged me, crying. This morning, a dozen thugs surrounded our stall. They spat at us, and we couldn't do any business. Not only that, they beat your father. Yara, look at us. We're fine, but your father is already like this. I felt a deep sense of helplessness. These people were truly despicable. In a society governed by law, they dared to commit such heinous acts. On one hand, I couldn't help but hesitate. If bringing down Ryan Hospital meant risking my family's lives, was it worth it? I wasn't a hero, I was just an ordinary person who wanted my parents to live long and healthy lives. Maybe we should not pursue it. I couldn't bring myself to say the last 3 words. After a long silence, my father shook his head. No, if we don't pursue this, Ryan Hospital won't let us go either. And besides, isn't life about standing up for what's right? Someone has to do it, so why not us? At worst, we'll hide until we find the evidence. I forced a smile, but my heart was already wavering. I knew my father was just trying to reassure me. Ryan Hospital's local network of connections was beyond our ability to fight. And even if we ran, our relatives would still be here. What if Ryan Hospital threatened them? Just as I was hesitating, Charles sent a message. Go for it, Yara. We all believe in you. I was moved to tears and made a silent vow. I would make Ryan Hospital pay as soon as possible. Chapter 11. The next morning, a police officer named Sterling came to see me. I've been investigating this case, Sterling said bluntly. But Ryan Hospital's legal team is too cunning, leaving no loose ends. After seeing your case, I knew my suspicions were correct. I learned that it wasn't a coincidence that Nathaniel's patients were uneducated. Ryan Hospital specifically targeted this demographic. Honest farmers, diagnosed with various illnesses, would undoubtedly follow the doctor's orders, taking whatever medication was prescribed. Barely literate, some were deceived until their deaths, still grateful to the hospital. Based on my investigation, Ryan Hospital has treated at least 100 cancer cases in recent years. I suspect many of these people weren't actually sick. If patients discovered the truth, the hospital would claim a misdiagnosis. If they noticed discrepancies in their medical bills, the blame would fall on the doctors. So even if we investigate, we can't find substantial evidence. I was shocked. 100 families were no small number. What do you plan to do? I asked. Stake out and investigate, and unite more victims to file a lawsuit. Sterling, if we make this public, wouldn't it be easier to find evidence? Without hesitation, I told him about my public report, including the restricted posts. His eyes lit up. That's a great idea. If more people post, the impact will be greater. Ryan Hospital can restrict 1 person, but can they restrict 10, 100? If we united, even ants could topple a tree. But Sterling asked, but what? But the safety of the posters can't be guaranteed. I bit my lip, voicing my concern. Sterling nodded. Don't worry about that. There are more officers who suspect Ryan Hospital than just me. Protecting you is our duty. Chapter 12. Not long after, Ryan Hospital's people came to harass us again, sometimes even calling in the middle of the night, threatening to kill me. But with police protection, my family and relatives were safe from harm. Sterling and I continued our investigation, sometimes staking out the hospital, sometimes posing as medical staff to visit patients. Following the clues, we indeed found many people who had been deceived by Ryan Hospital. 3 months later. It was an ordinary day when I posted the pre-recorded video once more. Unlike the previous 2 times, this time I wasn't alone. My name is Yara White. I am publicly accusing Ryan Hospital. A year ago, my mother was diagnosed with a severe illness at Ryan Hospital. My name is John Lee. I am publicly accusing Ryan Hospital. My name is Susan Miller. I am publicly accusing Ryan Hospital. One video after another emerged like bamboo shoots after rain. Within 10 minutes, my video showed it was restricted again. I knew Ryan Hospital was at work. But even if they deleted it, I could keep posting. One video after another, continuously uploaded online. Some voices were filled with anger, others with exhaustion. Some broke down in tears, recounting their stories. They prescribed fake medication. My father wasn't sick, but he died after taking their drugs. They're monsters. They killed my father. We sold our house and land to treat our child. He died young, and his mother, burdened with debt to Ryan Hospital, jumped to her death. Ryan Hospital sent people to threaten us into silence. They splashed chicken blood and excrement at our door, claiming it was a neighbor dispute when we called the police. It's unbearable. I could empathize deeply because I had experienced it all. Ryan Hospital was lawless, but in a society governed by law, justice would not be absent. The truth couldn't be hidden forever. One post could be restricted, but dozens were enough to overwhelm Ryan Hospital. As expected, the topic quickly spread. Ryan Hospital's falsified medical reports and exorbitant fees became trending topics. Netizens were outraged. Are they insane? $20,000 just for hospitalization? What kind of hospital charges that? Prescribing fake medication? Those are lives at stake. Locals know this hospital. Their medication prices are outrageous, and they have ties to local thugs. If you don't comply, they'll harass you at night. Ryan Hospital's legal team called me directly. Yara White, how much do you want? Delete your posts and tell everyone it was Nathaniel's fault, and we'll give you $30,000. Otherwise, we have ways to make you pay. I laughed. I don't want money. I want you all in hell. As the situation escalated, Ryan Hospital's people couldn't sit still. They frantically tried to remove the trending topics, calling victims to delete their posts. But the public saw through their actions. One hand couldn't cover the sky. Ryan Hospital's actions only fueled netizens' anger, and the topic continued to climb, reaching nationwide attention. Sterling was equally shocked by the response. Within 3 hours, a former Ryan Hospital doctor posted a confession. He revealed that upon joining Ryan Hospital, many doctors were given hidden tasks to diagnose at least one cancer patient per month. The hospital and doctors would split the profits from these patients' medical fees and loans. Those who refused faced either resignation and silence or threats to their families. Through these unethical practices, Ryan Hospital quickly amassed wealth, becoming a top local hospital. That evening, Sterling excitedly informed me that Ryan Hospital had been designated a key investigation project. With the overwhelming evidence from online reports, the investigation progressed rapidly. A week later, Sterling called me. We did it. Ryan Hospital's director was charged with defrauding over $80 million, deceiving over 400 families, and was sentenced to death for intentional homicide. The hospital's executives were also arrested, facing life in prison. The funds were tripled and compensated to the victims. But I knew the dead could never return. With everything settled, the shadows of my past life finally dissipated. Tears streamed down my face. In the distance, my father was picking out local specialties to bring to Charles, and my mother turned to ask why I was crying. Nothing, I'm just so happy. She didn't know that in my past life, I never saw justice and lost them. It's all over, Yara. You did great. We're so proud of you. My mother held my hand. We're proud of you. Yes, it's all over. The villains were brought to justice, and righteousness finally shone in the light. Chapter 13. After everything was settled, Nathaniel faced prison and enormous compensation. The people behind the corrupt hospital didn't want to let him go either. Desperate, he came to me for help. Yara, please, save me. Why should I? I retorted. He stood before me, his face bruised, his clothes stained with blood. Glancing nervously at the door behind him, he shivered. Tears streaming, he pleaded, "I was wrong, I really was. Yara, you still love me, right? Please, save me." Since my rebirth, I hadn't cried once. But hearing Nathaniel's plea, my nose tingled. When I first met him, I thought I had finally found the right person. When he chose to face my mother's illness with me instead of leaving, I was deeply moved and trusted him completely, giving him all the money. What did I get in return? His betrayal. In my previous life, when he stood in court, confidently twisting the truth and demanding I repay the medical bills, the pain in my heart was indescribable. Seeing I was unmoved, Nathaniel suddenly thought of something and gritted his teeth. "If you don't want your private videos to be leaked, you'd better bail me out." I was shocked. "What did you say?" Seeing my reaction, Nathaniel dropped the act. "This was one of my ways to make money. You made me quite a bit. Now that you're somewhat famous online, if these get out, you won't be able to show your face." I couldn't believe Nathaniel could be so shameless. "You really have no bottom line," he sneered. "Bottom line? What's that? Can it be used as money or food? If I hadn't kept this card, would you save me?" I quickly asked, "Where are the original files? Tell me." Nathaniel smirked, his bruised face looking ridiculous. "Get me out, and I'll tell you. Do you know how much it costs to bail you out? It's not something that can be done easily." "So what?" "No matter what, you have to find a way." Shameless. I left the prison with a dark expression. Back home, I bit my nails, thinking of a solution. Nathaniel was truly despicable. Even if I managed to bail him out, releasing such a villain would be a danger to everyone. Moreover, once he had this leverage over me, who knew what he would do next? I decided to seek professional help to check my home. In the bathroom and bedroom, they found several hidden cameras. Since Nathaniel was in jail, these cameras had been inactive for a long time. "Is there any way to find their cloud storage?" I asked the professionals. They shook their heads. "This requires advanced technology, and you know, people like him are very cautious. These cameras haven't uploaded in a long time. If they sense something's wrong, they'll disconnect immediately. Even if we turn them on, they might not connect." Hearing this, my heart sank. What should I do? After much deliberation, I decided to seek help from the police. At the station, I confessed to Sterling about the threats and provided the evidence. The lead officer looked serious. "This method of operation suggests a well-organized crime ring, not just an individual." He handed the cameras to the tech team. "Don't worry, we'll do our best to find the original files." His words reassured me greatly. "Thank you." Soon, Sterling informed me that they had traced the network through the cameras. A large criminal network was gradually being dismantled. When I saw Nathaniel again, he no longer had the confidence to threaten me. "You'll save me if you don't want to be ruined." I laughed coldly. "Submit to you? Dream on. The police have already taken down the entire network." Nathaniel's face turned pale. I continued. "Enjoy your time here." Due to this incident, Nathaniel's sentence was extended. Now, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. With the dark clouds dispersed, I could finally look forward to a truly bright future.